Let me start the recording and then do like an introduction for the listener. So good afternoon now. My name is Claudia and this is Christian from Santiago, Chile. For the studios in Fairfax City, we're very humble and grateful that Nad accepted our invitation to our show. Nad is a US-born Swedish progressive rock musician and songwriter who is currently the vocalist in Steve Hackett's band and also maintain a solo career and collaboration with several other musicians. Nad, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So the way it's going to do it, I will ask two, three questions, then Christian will ask two or three, and that sort of thing. Very, very formal.
Yeah. Okay.
This has been a very weird year for everybody. You know, with all that is going on with the virus and so on and so forth. How is this affecting your creativity? You stay more at home now. You cannot tour, that kind of stuff.
Well, the lockdown or the pandemic has, of course, I haven't been at home since I started to sing with Steve. I've been March, and normally I'm out about 5 months per year touring, but it enabled me to record a new album, which is finished now, and we've just mastered it, but it's having a slot, at the record label for release. It's not going to be released until April because you have all these artists at Inside Out that's been, of course, been in the same situation as I have.
Yeah.
They've just been recording new music. So there's a queue of releasing new albums from all the artists at Inside Out and Sony for that matter, and other sub-labels, I'm sure. So my slot is April the 9th, but I will have a couple of singles released before that. So in that way, it's not that bad. I'll have to wait for another 5 months. That's okay.
Yeah. Well, you're alive. You're producing music. You're writing. You're healthy.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
I'm alive and I'm well out here. I live in the countryside. I just live here with. Right now, it's just me and my cat.
Yeah. Understood. Were you born like in a musical family, and when did you start writing songs? Were your dad or brother, sister musicians?
Well, and my dad used to play the violin, and my grandmother, my father's mother, was a concerto pianist. But I never lived with them, so it's just I just inherited by my talent just comes through the bloodline.
Yeah.
But because my parents got divorced when I was very, very little, I was about 2 years old, so I was raised by my grandparents in southern parts of Sweden, a city Malmö, just across the water from Copenhagen. So that's where I was raised, and I just taught myself to the piano. It was just, I was just drawn to it, So I started playing piano when I was 4 or 5 years old.
And then when did you start sort of writing songs, if you will? At that age?
7 or 8, maybe.
Yeah. Wow, the early life. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically all my life been writing songs.
Yeah. Go ahead, Christian.
But I didn't start singing until I was maybe 13, 14.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, your lyrics are unbelievable. We'll talk more in depth about that later on. Go ahead, Christian.
Hello, Nad. This is Christian from Santiago, Chile. I had the pleasure of seeing you with Steve at least a couple of times here. The last time was 2018, I guess. Yeah. And we interviewed Steve. I met him a few times, and I think I very like it because he's such a simple and friendly and talented guy. So thank you for your fantastic art. I was watching lots of video of your YouTube channel, the things you tape after the shows, before the shows. And I was going to ask you, what is that? Well, I think you just said that. I was going to ask you, what's that fantastic, ultra quiet and safe looking place with 2 lakes you seem to live in? I think it's the same land of one of my favorite directors, Ingmar Bergman. Is that Malmö in Sweden?
I was raised in Malmö, but during the 60s. But I moved here to Stockholm 50 years ago. So I live just about 30 kilometers south of Stockholm city, out in the countryside.
Yeah, it looks like a very quiet place, and
very quiet and very serene. and a very peaceful place to live. You know, my cat can go in and out the door as much as she likes. It's a very, very nice area.
Yeah, I saw you. Yeah.
Mick Beggs has come to stay with me many times. He just loves it here. He wants to move here.
Yeah, I could appreciate that you really, like myself, love cats. I do love and like animals, and cats are brilliant and nice. So I was happy to see that aspect that I didn't know about you and the cat. And I think your cat was even on one of your records. Like you sampled.
Well, I didn't sample her. I just held it to the microphone, and she didn't.
Okay.
Started to moan and sound, and I recorded her for the song "Ship's Cat."
Yeah, yeah. Now, talking about the past a little bit, Nat, I suppose, I don't know, I'm just imagining things. With Uniform, maybe that was the name inspired by Moonlit Night, or I don't know the meaning of that word. Mm-hmm.
It's a made-up word. Peter Gabriel made that word up. It's just a typical Gabriel, imaginary word. And so, yeah, because at the time when we were recording the album, we called ourselves Sylvan and Bonamici, which could have worked, but the label thought we should have a band name. And I just came up with, what about Uniform? Because it's short and simple, and Genesis fans can relate to it. Since the project was just a homage, a tribute to Genesis with our own songs,
Do you think it comes from unicorn and something else?
I think it's a unicorn or uniform. I mean, yeah. It could. I really don't know. I never really got in depth with that question. What it means.
Well, I just wanted to say that I really liked, because I must confess I hadn't heard the band before, Uniform. I thought it was excellent, really. I was wondering what happened with Uniform and the Agents of Mercy. You left those projects behind. Are they just frozen for some time, or are they definitely gone?
I would most likely say that Uniform is definitely gone. That was a 4-year in the making of that album, and I was working together with Bonamici. He's not a professional musician, and he's got so many other projects and things that he's doing. And so when that album came out, Roine Stoltz heard it and thought that he would like to work with me. He liked my singing, and so he asked me to record some of my vocals for his solo album, because the Flower Kings were on hiatus at the time. But then it grew into Agents of Mercy, because he started to give me more songs. And we did 3 albums with Agents of Mercy. Last one, Black Forest, probably the best one. It's heaviest one. But you see, when we've been touring with that album in 2012, that's when Steve called me. And, there was no point really in working with Agents of Mercy when I was touring with Steve for 4 or 5 months per year. It was just like the next step. But everything that came after Uniform was always somebody who snatched me up. You know what I mean? I didn't particularly look for work or look for anyone else to work with. They found me and asked me if I was interested, and that's what happened.
Why do you think? Because I've been trying to search for that part, for that information. Why do you think Steve picked you specifically?
I think it's basically because of my voice. When I sing Genesis, and mind you, I hadn't sung Genesis before I got the gig, but it's the way that I sing the songs. I tend to sing the songs the way I've heard them. I don't. My voice goes into that mode, if you like. So I don't try to, because I can go anywhere with my voice if I want to. I can sing soul, I can sing jazz, I can metal, I can do anything with the voice. But I also believe that, as I've said in other interviews, that my timbre or my depth in my voice is kind of similar to other singers, and like Peter Gabriel or Steve Winwood or Gary Brooker. We all have that sort of husky quality to our voices, and so it's like a family of voices, if you like, because you could never have me singing Yes music. That wouldn't sound credible. I don't have that kind of a voice. And
If you
also,
allow, yeah. Sorry.
Steve,
Go ahead.
I also think that Steve liked that I was kind of flamboyant as well, because
Mm.
he needs someone that is a bit over the top on stage, because people want to be entertained.
Yeah. If you allow me to say so, listening to several of your songs, I could find, maybe I'm wrong, some air from Cat Stevens' glottal sound.
Then you will like my new album that's coming out in April.
Sure.
You would hear a lot more of that side of my voice, because it's very folky.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to it, by the way, obviously. And when did you become familiar with Genesis? What else were you listening to back in those days? I imagine that before this Hackett chapter happened in your life, you had been, become familiar with all that music.
I was 16 years old when I worked I had a summer job in a record store in Gothenburg.
Mm.
At the time, I was listening to Deep Purple and Uriah Heep and stuff like that. And one of my colleagues said, "What are you listening to?" "Oh, I'm listening to Deep Purple at the moment." Well, listen to this. And then he just held up the Last Housewife Broadway album for me. And I've heard of Genesis, but I'd never heard the music, apart from I Know What I Like, that song, but I didn't know it was Genesis. I just realized later on, oh, I know that song. But anyway, I heard the album and I fell in love with it. And, once you fall in love with Genesis music, especially from those days, it's hard to forget them. It's like I met so many diehard Genesis fans, and they all seem to share that absolutely, it's a deep down kind of love for the music. And also most of the songs or the albums came into their lives pretty much in the same age before you're 20. And so that gets really cemented into your mind and soul. And same thing happened to me.
Now, what's your interpretation, Nad, of Gabriel's so many times cryptic lyrics, and how did you manage to be able to embrace all that inheritance, I would say, and captivate the new and old fans? It's a daring thing to do, isn't it? It's a challenge. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I really realized what I was letting myself in for in the beginning. I was just so happy that I would get to sing Genesis with Steve. And I wasn't really prepared for the reception of the public, because, you must know that initially a lot of people didn't like me. They didn't like to hear anyone else sing those songs. And I can understand that. And especially didn't like me if I sounded too good, because then it's like, ooh, he's rivaling Gabriel's vocals now. That's not good. No one should be sounding that good or that bad, for that matter, because I had days when I didn't sing that well. When you have a cold or tired or fatigue, it's easy not to hit the right notes. That happened a couple of times, but that happens to everyone. And I heard a story about Gabriel back in the day. Steve told me that, Gabriel will forget the lyrics and the audience will finish the songs for them and stuff like that. And so, and when you have a cold, Gabriel often had a cold when he was out touring with Genesis. I only had a cold twice during these 7 years.
And did it take you too long to learn the lyrics? Because that's a monumental thing to do, really.
For the really hard songs like the Battle of Epping Forest, started studying maybe 6 months before we were supposed to start rehearsing. But that's just because I like to be very well prepared. And you just go in there and you just know it, like you can sing it in your sleep. And it makes me feel good too. That's I remember when we were rehearsing Battle of Epping Forest for the very first time, we just ran through it flawlessly. Everyone knew it. And he was just smiling from ear to ear. What a band, he said.
Yeah, well, it's really amazing. By the way, are you familiar with the Argentinian band Rael, like the character from the Lamb?
I couldn't say that I've heard them, but I've heard of the name.
Yeah, they did a pretty good tribute. And these days, because the original singer, Ignacio Rodriguez, unfortunately passed away while skiing in Japan, and they are singing with a Chilean guy.
Oh, sorry, that's Rail. That's why. Yes, I met them.
Yeah.
I've been to dinner with them, with the drummer. I've been to the drummer's house.
Oh, that's the Daniel Rousey, the doctor.
I think
He's a
that's,
doctor.
yeah, I think that could that be 5 years ago or 4 years? Something. Steve, Joe, and I went to his house, and the whole band was there. Oh, what's that Rail? I'm sorry, there's so many. Now I forget the names again. But yes, they told me about the singer who passed away in a ski accident.
Yeah, and they have a Chilean guy now. You know that. There's a Chilean Gabriel these days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I would like to ask you now, Nat, before we go back to Claudio, is what I observed here when I saw you singing with the band is a very interesting thing, that you show lots of respect and stand behind the band, or never in front, as a lead singer would do whenever a song finishes. And that was very meaningful to me, because I in some way, I assume that you understand your role in the band. It's like it's difficult to explain that.
Well, I haven't decided to stand where I stand. That's I've been told to be standing where I stand, and I guess because it's Steve's show, I don't know. But the only thing that can be a little bit discerning sometimes is that the people on the sides, left and right, they can't see me because I'm being pushed way too much in the back. But also the thing is that I'm kind of tall, I'm 6'3" tall, and Steve is much shorter than me. So I think from being straight, looking at the stage straight forward from behind, back there, I think it levels out very nicely. It looks nice. Yeah, well, it's more about, I think, knowing your place in the show, knowing that I'm not the actual frontman, but I have a frontman's role. It can be a little tricky, but I've done it so many times now. I've done more than 700 shows with Steve, and so I've learned when to exit the stage, when to return, and when it's Steve's moment, I'll better leave because I've got nothing to do really.
Yeah, and who takes care of your cat? What's the name? Is a name in Swedish?
Scroot.
What? Scroot. What does it mean? Does it mean anything?
Yeah, it's the core of an apple. The thing that you eat. The seeds. But she loves my apple tree. You see, so she's often up in my apple tree, but also it means when you're feeling scrootish, you're feeling a little frail and a little tired or not so strong, and sort of when you're really sick, feeling scrooty now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is a very little girl, and she's very. She is a little.
Yeah, and who takes care of her?
A friend.
Okay.
A friend who also live in the country, so she stays with him. Okay.
So you never thought of rejecting this invitation from Steve and remaining with your projects, did you?
Well, no, because it enabled me to quit my day job that I had. So I became fully professional by singing with Steve. And at the time when I got the gig with Steve, I didn't have a record deal. My solo albums, well, I've done a couple of solo albums in the past, but since I was recruited by Steve, I've done 4 solo albums on the Inside Out label. And so my solo career really didn't take off before I started to sing with Steve. So that's like a parallel thing that I do. Hopefully we'll be able to go out on my own one of these days. I have to before I get too old.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're just 1 year older than me, and we are very young, both of us.
Well, yeah, I'm 61 now.
Yeah, I'm 60. So Claudio.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, well, you are very humble, Nat. I know that success in many ways came your way with Steve Hackett's band, but I listened to the early work you did before 2012, and like Christian mentioned, you're talented. I mean, you got talent. You know, playing with other musicians and your voice, and you gifted, and so you would have made it anyway. It so happened that playing with Steve, you know, and Steve being former member of Genesis, it opened new door for you, if you will. But you were there.
Thank you. Now, well, let me put it like this. To sing with Steve enabled me to grow as a stage performer. And it also, I was pushed into a situation where I really needed to get to know a lot more about my singing than I did before, because some of the Genesis stuff are very, very hard material for me to sing. I mean, I wouldn't write that kind of a song for myself, to, you know, like really struggling bits that are so high that, and I had to reinvent my vocal technique to go up on the really, really high notes. You leave your chest voice and go into your head voice instead. And that just takes a little technique to learn that. So I've learned very much through working with Stephen, and I think that's part of my success as a solo artist as well. It's a good thing to have.
Yeah, so in a way, you know, on a stage with the type of clothes you wear, the makeup and the hair,
yes,
it becomes like in psychological terms, like a new persona, if you will, or the same persona, but with, you know, playing music, if you will.
Well, I tend to believe that, you know, all people have different sides to the personalities. I mean, I'm sure you do too. I mean, you have your side, you have the lover side, you have maybe the family man side, you have the friendly side with your guys, and you act a certain way amongst women and a different kind of way with men, and sometimes you just, you know what I mean? And so same thing for me as an artist. If you've been put in a situation where you stand in front of thousands of people and singing, I have more to offer than just being the homie guy. I just become the artist instead, and I feel more confident with the stage gear, the makeup, and everything. Puts me in a role like a theater piece, if you like, and it becomes more fun, you know.
Yeah,
that's how.
Understood, right? If I take you back now, 2015, with at the time the courting the widow, before the bride said no, and before the latest albums, before the new one that you have, you ever thought that would become like an impressive vampire trilogy, if you will, with the album? You kind of, as you were writing the first one, right? The Court in the Window. You thought that you will do like a follow up after that, or
it wasn't until
Well,
it wasn't until I was starting to work on the Bride Said No album that I came up with this title, The Bride Said No. It's actually a song that I never got to finish back in the late 1980s. The title. So I took that title and started to write a new song with the same name. You know what I mean? So I think it's intriguing, and it's cocky, and it's funny. And then I was thinking, well, I had the widow, and now I have a bride. And then I started to see the bigger picture that I could probably make a trilogy. That's how that happened, really. And it was kind of nice to work in that format, and also not to do exactly the same album again, but to try to do something new each time I recorded an album, which I also have now with the new one that is going to be released in April. I've left the trilogy behind me now. I'm doing more of a singer-songwriter kind of an album.
I got you. Perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead. Okay, so it's Nat. I was going to ask you something that you just mentioned a few seconds ago. Jumping to the Genesis topic. When I had just entered the university here to study teaching of English, which is what I studied, I became very sick. And one of my distractions was attempting to translate Supper's Ready, which was crazy because, you know, it's so strange, the lyrics. So what has been one of the most challenging numbers of the Genesis repertoire for you to, not only in terms of remembering the lyrics, but also in terms of interpretation and, I don't know, the intensity there are sometimes in those songs? You mentioned Battle of Ebbing Forest, which is so much fun, but so crazy. Yeah.
Well, see, what I tend to do when I'm studying a piece of music like that, I draw it into my music program, you know, that I work in Cubase, and then I just loop bits and I sing along with the bits, you know. And when I've done that for a bit, well, I can sing it, you know, fairly fluently. I just move on to the next bit and then loop that, and then I loop the next bit, and then I loop them all three together and sing them all in a chunk, and I feel that's working. Then I move on to the next bit. So that's the process for me to learn. And it's funny thing is that you see the learning curve for anything that you do, really, if you study book, or you're going to have you're going to do a test in school or something, it's always that learning curve that all the information goes to a certain part of your brain, you know, it's a learning part of your brain. Then it slowly shifts over and moves to another part of your brain. This is muscle memory. You know, when you ride your bicycle, you don't even think, oh, I have to step, or when you walk, you just do it. Exactly the same thing works for the muscle memory. And it's amazing that it will, overnight, when you go to bed, it will move over to another part of your brain. It's very interesting. And so when people are saying to me, is it hard to remember those lyrics? No, I don't remember them. I don't remember them. My brain remembers it. You know, that's how easy it is. So once you've gotten it into your muscle memory, of course, you need to maintain it. If you never sing it again, you will start to forget it. But I was singing through Battle of Epping Forest the other day just for fun. I haven't sung it live in 6 months or 7 months now, even more, since March. And it's still there because I study it so well. So the only thing that can happen on stage once in a while is that you lose a word. You have no idea where that word went, but that can happen because of a distraction. You know, somebody makes mistakes, or somebody disturbs you, and it also disturbs the muscle memory.
What disturbs you in a show? What could, apart from a musician, the wrong note?
Oh, it could be somebody plays a wrong note, or it could be that I'm tired. Because on tour, you are quite often, you can be very tired because there's a hectic touring schedule, you know, in and out from different cities every day. And if you're lucky, you have 2 days off, and then you can rest.
But are you bothered by people applauding in the middle of the songs? Do you prefer Japan, which are so silent and quiet, versus Latin America, where they go crazy all the time? How do you feel about those different audiences?
Well, the Japanese people, they tend to wake up during the end of the show, and then they allow them, because I think it's sort of a courteous thing that they
It is.
You know, they can be bursting inside with emotions, but I must say, South America, the whole America, North America, they're crazy, they're lovely too, but I must say that I think Mexico City was the pinnacle of everything, because I actually heard 3,000 people singing along with the lyrics, and I've never heard that before. It was maddening. Just go on YouTube and listen to Musical Box from Blackberry Theater, Mexico City in 2018, I think it was. And you'll hear thousands of people singing along, and you don't hear that on other clips, but you hear it there.
Yeah. Sorry. I was going to mention, because I'm a big movie fan, I grew up watching horror movies, and then I became interested in music scores, you know, and for example, the Universal movies, the Hammer film, and I was watching the Regal Buster packing and the photographs and the coffin on the coach. Why the Gothic aspect, the almost Hammer film aspect of the, you know, the coach and somebody in a coffin? I'm sorry, I don't know. I haven't read the lyrics in detail, but I was going to ask you that because it caught my attention, the Gothic look of the album.
Well, it's because it's the vampire. The vampire is 50% a pirate and 50% a vampire. It's more. It has a humorous aspect of it as well. Yeah. I'm sort of almost making fun of myself a little bit. It shouldn't be taken seriously. It's just like a gimmick, really. But now I've left the vampire character behind, at least for some time. So I was what do you say? I designed that album cover, and I wanted to be in a carriage from the 17th century on a small dirt road in the forest, looking out through a window. And I just happened to know one of these people who got a lot of horses, and just went there to see them, say hello, and all of a sudden I see this carriage with this hearse with a coffin. I thought, my goodness, that's the vampire's vehicle. And I thought, can we use this? And that's what happened. And, the rest is just history, really.
Mm-hmm. Now, if we talk about music and how people describe it, have you ever been bothered by the progressive tag? Oh, because so many people renegade about progressive rock. Me and Claudio just had a conversation last week with PFM, the Italian band, the Premiata Forneria and Marconi, and I was amazed to see that they didn't like to be called progressive when they are. I didn't say that in that moment, but how do you feel about that? Because some people say, yeah, it's just rock. It's not progressive is regressive. I think I remember Fish once said that progressive is regressive. How do you feel about that tactic?
Well, I just think that the term progressive rock makes it easier for a lot of people to, pinpoint down what to expect. The lavish arrangements, the lengthy epics, and all of that. That's very much associated with progressive rock. Now, that was a term that wasn't around back in the day. I mean, in the 70s, people didn't say progressive rock. I think the Swedes said symphonic rock, or some people said art rock. So I don't mind if people say I'm a prog rock artist. At least people know what to expect. But for me, it comes down to, it's more like Nad's music. It's Nad music.
Mm-hmm.
And the new one has some of the elements that belong in progressive rock. It's just I've gone more folky this time. And it's more scaled down, but it could easily be compared with the more pastel kind of early Genesis stuff with all the 12-string guitar. You got a lot of 12-string guitars on the new album, but I'm not trying to beat the Genesis thing. It's just that we chose to use a lot of 12-string guitars because it sounds nice.
Now, about the older works, the older records, I'm not sure if you have if there are going to be any reissues. I really fell in love with Uniform, for example. I was amazed by the cover, and I don't know if there's a Sylvanite. Sylvanite is the pronunciation, right? Sylvanite. Yeah. Are they going to be reissued in some moment?
Well, Sylvanite, I have them. I did two albums that I paid for myself. I released myself, The Life of a Housewife, which is a sort of bizarre pop opera, and then Sylvanite that was cut in 2003, if my memory serves me right. Yes, in 2003. So I sell Sylvanite from my web shop that I printed myself from a manufacturer. But if you talk about having them reissued by a record label, I haven't really given it much thought because they're so old. Maybe it will happen in the future. I don't know. But there's of course, since I became more known, more people wants to hear my old stuff as well.
Yeah. And now that maybe you can reconsider it because vinyl is giving music some forgotten records lots of value these days. So, for example, Uniform on vinyl record would be amazing. I don't know if it ever came out on vinyl.
No, it didn't, because the record label at the time, Progress Records, he didn't make vinyls. You have to, it was released in 2008, and I think the interest for vinyls has increased a lot over the last, 5-6 years maybe. It has, more popular now than before. And you find more vinyl stores than CD stores today, especially for used vinyl. It's very, you have these small record shops here and there. it's hard for me to say right now. Maybe it's a good thing to have uniform re-released on vinyl. I can have it done. I can just speak to my record label about it.
Are you in any way fond of vinyl records? Do you see any difference? Do you care about digital versus analog and the way people approach the music, like taking out the record of the jacket and versus, you know, clicking on a file? Do you see nothing? Do you just hear? How do you see those things?
I find it, of course, I find it's much more accessible and easier to click a file. If I can listen to my phone, I can listen where I am. But I do have my turntable still down the stairs in my sitting room, and I got all my vinyls left that I bought in the 70s. And it's a special feeling to put it on. You know, I must admit, it's more like a sacred kind of moment, really. And you make more of an effort of listening to it. Some people favor the vinyl sound. I favor the exact sound, I guess. An exact sound is the way I've heard the music. Like my own albums, I don't particularly enjoy playing my own albums at all, but if I would, I guess I'd play the CD or the files. That's because it's easier for me to access it that way. You know, in the studio, you just have, most of the time I'm in my studio anyway.
And could you mention of those vinyl records you still have downstairs, 3 of them that you would never give away, like you would never be able to, you know, not go back to over and over again?
Yes, I can. There's Elton John's second album. It's the black one with Your Song, Border Song, Take Me to the Pilot, those songs. My mother bought that album when I was 11, and it became like, we heard it all the time. It's a sort of very much a blueprint for me in my early days in the 70s. Landaeta on Broadway definitely is something that also hold very dear to my heart. Very dear, in fact. And of course, I have so many, but I guess I would also say, yes, Tales from Topographic Oceans is also one of my favorite albums. Those 3.
Nothing by Pink Floyd or King Crimson? No? No,
they're not that dear to me.
Okay, interesting.
Not the same way. Pink Floyd, I always liked them, but I was never a big fan of Pink Floyd. I like them, you know, I love some of the stuff, but I'm not a big fan.
Okay. And what about, I was going to mention, going back to Regal Bastard, you
Yes.
really had amazing guest musicians. How did you do that? Because I was really impressed to see the sticker on the album. Is like a big number of stars there.
Well, it's because of all the touring I've done with Steve, I've got to meet all these people quite a few times. Nick DiVigilio, for instance, I mean, he played with us in Agents of Mercy 11 years ago in the States when we were touring, so I got to know him then. Jonas Rangel, of course, you know, he's in plays with Steve and Agents of Mercy, so that goes without saying. Tony Levin, I met him many, many times, always very sweet and supportive of me, and when I asked him if he was keen to play on 3 of my albums now. He plays more on this new one than he did on the previous ones. He loves playing on my albums. Every time I ask him, say, yes, go ahead, send me the songs. And so he's just very keen. And Steve, of course, goes without saying. He plays guitar on my new one on 1 track, plays 12 string, and I recorded my voice for his new rock album on 1 track as well. So we just trade favors, really. So, you know, after so many years with Hackett, you do get to meet people and get to know them, and so that's how you bond, really. And so it's not that hard to ask. You can always be turned down. Guthrie Govan is also a very good example of a contact from different sources. I mean, Nick Beggs knew him very well, so Guthrie knew me because of Nick and Steve. It's amazing how many people know who you are, but you don't know who they are.
Did you ever become familiar with songs like Too Shy by Kajagoogoo? before you met Nick?
Of course. Didn't we
You
all?
did. Yeah, we did. Sure. Yeah. So you do like pop.